Slow pitch jigging is all the craze right now. And so if you're like me, I call it like it is. I'm a novice. Just got into this probably a year or so ago. Took a fun trip with my son down to Polo Ridge, courtesy of the guy that owns the shop we're standing in right now, Mr. Mike Lipsky from Real Deal Tackle. So if you're trying to learn a lot about slow pitch fishing, pay attention in this video. Right now, we've got a seminar happening tonight here at Real Deal Bait and Tackle with Mr. Jorge Polo.
Thank you.
Owner of Jig Pro Fishing, slow pitch jigging company. Mike Lipsky, I see him posted on social media, and I pretty much instantly pick up the phone, and then essentially we invited ourselves in to video the seminar. George, thank you so much for your courtesy and having us here. So before the guys get here, what are we covering? What are you talking about today in the seminar?
Okay, so today is about the basics, right? So we're gonna be covering all the basics of these slow pitch jigging fever, right? So there is a lot of information out there, and not necessarily the right information for beginners. And today I'll be covering everything from a little bit of the history about it, how everything happened, how we got here, and then more specifically about the tackle. We always talk about this system. You learn about that in your latest trip to the Yankee Cup, and we want to be covering the rod, the reel, the line, all of these things that will make you successful when you get on the water, right? So that's my main goal, like try to share with the people coming to the seminar and the people behind the camera there all the basics, so when you guys get out there, you can catch more fish.
Sure. George doesn't know this, but I'm actually a customer. I mean, obviously I've bought your jigs, fished them. I know we caught fish on them down in Polo Ridge and all that kind of stuff, but we own two rods that Mike helped us set up, and the Jig Pro rod is one of the rods that we have. My son was primarily fishing that down there, so yeah, I'm excited to kind of be a fly on the wall. I know that there's probably a lot more people like me. I've been fishing my whole life, competitively fishing, caught a lot of fish in my time across the board. But this was what fascinated me about the slow pitch game is just the technique, the style, and it's something new. And obviously if you go to these places, you know, where the bottom and everything is really kind of, it's built, if you will, for slow pitch fishing. It is an absolute blast. So he's gonna cover a lot. Don't hit that fast forward button because you're gonna miss something really important. Jamie Bunn, Fish Blue Water, here we go. So, got an opportunity before everybody gets here, and I'm gonna take the opportunity to try and provide you guys as much info as we can. So we are here in the jig room, which, by the way, we have produced 2 additional videos here in the store a while back, prior to my first trip, kind of just trying to share information about how you learn how to make choices about rods and reels and the setup and just getting yourself organized, right? I'm sure George will cover some of that, but a lot of other things on the fishing side of slow pitch fishing here tonight. But I refer to this as like the jig candy store, man. Like, it is craziness in here with all the different styles of jigs. This section you see right here, this is the man. This is the guy. He's got an engineering degree. He actually designs, creates these things all right there himself. You're looking at the guy. And so, George, there's so many different styles. There's these wider styles with wings. There's the longer, slow pitch jig styles. Obviously, this is going to be for show. So, talk to me a little bit about the different styles of jigs and how people make choices about which kind of jig they're going to use based on what they're doing.
Okay, well, jigging is all about decisions, just like life, right? So we have to take a lot of decisions, and before you take any decisions when you're on the water, you gotta understand what's happening around you. You know, I always say there's 3 very important things. So what direction your boat, you usually gonna do this from a boat, okay? Let's start from there.
Right.
And then if you're on a boat, the boat is always moving. It doesn't matter if you have wind or current or what's happening.
The drift of the boat.
It's always moving, right? So you gotta understand first, what direction are you moving? How fast are you moving? And how deep are you fishing?
Right.
Those are the 3 main things when it comes down to jig selection. And I get a lot of questions about like colors, and these look like very funky and very cool. But color is the least important part, believe it or not. So when we are selecting our jig, the first thing that we look is the shape, and the second thing is the weight. So I'm gonna pick the shape based on the current that I'm fishing. So if the current is, I'll throw some numbers out there so you guys can understand. So if the current is like, let's say 0 to 2 knots, I'm gonna pick a wide profile. These will be, RD will be like a wide profile, right?
And is that, will that flutter more in the fall? How does that kind of, the wider profile fall?
Yes, so a wider profile will take longer to get to the bottom, but will have better falling action.
Okay.
And longer falling time.
Right.
Right, so that maximizes your strike time.
Presentation and that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And then we'll pick a skinnier, longer shape if I have a higher current, right? Because it's gonna cut through the water column faster, and it's gonna give me better contact. And before I forget, one of the most important parts about slow pitch jigging is to stay vertical and have good contact with the jig. You know that when you were fishing on the Yankee Cap, right? You get more strikes when you are straight up and down.
Right.
Because you are able to efficiently move the jig in a better way, right?
Right. The more belly you have in line,
you lose
the further distances between the jig and the actual rod
correct.
tip and the action.
And because they work on the fall, so if you have a scope on your line, see if I can explain this right, but if you have a scope on your line, so if you are vertical,
so your scope as far as like the bend of the line.
Belly,
okay.
Right. So if you are vertical, straight up and down with your jig, and you jig, you're creating a slack, that jig is flattering nicely, right?
Right.
But if your jig, instead of staying right down here, is over there, when you jig it,
The line is.
that jig is not going to flatter as much. It's just sort of like going to go like this and go down to you.
I
You're
gotcha.
losing all of that
so
action.
the action is not quite as good.
Yes. So that's why the shape is going to be your number one thing what you do for when you pick your jig, right?
And I do remember to that point, like when we were fishing deeper on, like, so in addition to the videos that we've done in the store, there was 2 to 3 videos to follow, which are all on our channel, fishing off Pulley Ridge, coming out of Key West. And that was primarily a deep water trip, but when we got out to the significantly deeper stuff where we were fishing 800 and 900 foot of water, it was a lot of this kind of stuff versus, I saw a lot more of that than I saw of the wider stuff.
Yes.
I saw some of this and the shallower stuff, like 300, 400, maybe 500 feet if we didn't have a bunch of current.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm right there with you.
So that's like super important, right? And the next thing is gonna be the weight. And this is again, more decisions. So as a general rule for the weight, we say 1 gram per foot, give or take.
1
right?
gram per foot in terms of the depth of the water
Yes.
you're fishing.
So
Okay.
let's say, we're trying to jig in 200 feet of water. I'm gonna start with a 200 gram jig or close to that, 220, 240, that sort of range, right?
Sure.
See how I feel, see how I get that contact with the bottom on my jig, and then from there, if I'm comfortable, I'll stay. If not, I have to adjust, either go heavier or maybe change my shape,
Okay.
right? Now, you talk about that deeper water, right? There is limitation with our tackle. So if you are fishing 1,000 feet of water, can you use a 1,000 gram jig? Yes, but the rods are limitations. So
Right.
there is a sort of like a tipping point, right? Turning point.
Right.
So you can jig comfortably up to, I'll say, 540, 600 grams. Once you get heavier than that, you need a very specialized tackle, and you need to be a really experienced angler.
And a strong forearm.
Yes.
I can tell you from some of the deep stuff, you're doing this for a long period of time, and especially the guys that were doing it with manual crank reels versus the small electrics. It's a lot of cranking to come up from 1,000 feet of water if you don't get a bite, or if you're fighting a fish all the way up to the top.
And that's the reason why you were seeing longer jigs, because the way that we can get to 1,000 foot with a lighter weight is to get
Less surface area.
Yeah, that's the reason why you'll see 500 gram jigs getting to 1,200, 1,500 feet of water, because they'll just cut through that water column and it still give you that contact that you want.
Right. So here's a question I have for you. Let's say you're fishing in 600 feet of water, and you have super light current, and you can get to the bottom pretty efficiently, let's say with like a 400 gram jig, and you feel like you've got no scope, it's fishing well. Are you better off to fish is the least amount of weight you need in terms of the grams of the jig, if you can get away with it, versus going with the standard 600 gram jig and 600 feet of water, or it doesn't really matter so much?
Yes, so yes and no, and let
Okay.
me explain that. So, like everything else, over time, I noticed my personal experience is a smaller jig gets more bites, right? Just like humans, we
Right.
snack,
Right.
but we snack all day, but we only have 2 big meals, right? So, we caught very small fish in very big jigs every now and then. But if you are fishing the lightest possible, you are on the right track.
Okay.
Let me explain that. So if you are in 600 feet of water and you can get away with a 240 gram jig, go ahead.
Fish it. Okay.
Yes, because you're gonna be more comfortable, right? Jigging is a active way
Physical.
of fishing.
It's a
Yeah,
physical.
correct.
Yeah.
So it's gonna give you a better action because you're gonna be less tired, right? And also your tackle is gonna handle it better. Because remember, all the rods in the market, they go from 20 grams up to like 500-600 grams efficiently. I mean, there's rods that will handle 1,000 gram jigs. But
Right,
again,
right.
once you pass that 600 gram
You're getting
range,
technical at that point.
it's
Right,
tricky. It
right.
gets tricky.
And we don't want to get too far ahead of the game. You guys are just learning the same way that I am still continuing to learn. So you're going to talk a lot tonight. I'm not going to burn up too much of your vocal cords and your time. But
Okay, right.
just know also that everything that he talks about, we'll also make sure in the description of the video when everything comes out, we'll have the details on, the jig line, the rods, obviously places that you can find things, links to his site, as well as to Mike's site here. And if nothing else, we hope your level of knowledge is a little higher at the end of the video
That's
than
the
when
goal.
you started the video. And I'm excited to be a part of it. So again, thanks,
you.
buddy.
Thank you.
Yep.